What up YouTube? It's Frisky Dingo here, getting back with you guys with another reaction / review video. Today we're doing my favorite segment, One Giant Repost. The last 2 weeks I haven't been able to update you guys because I had a cold. It was pretty ravaging. It sucked completely. Like, my left nostril was on fire for like a week and a half. A lot of mucus. I know you guys don't want to hear nothing about that, but reality is I was suffering, so I couldn't really get in front of my computer, couldn't even really play any of my games. And the only game I really did play was like Fortnite at like 10-11 p.m. for like 2 hours. So I'm back at it, feeling very refreshed. So I just want to update you guys with a couple updated videos with the One Giant Repost segment, where I just reflect on videos I did that needed updating. So the three updated videos that I wanted to go back on was the Blackfishing with Jesy Nelson, Dave Chappelle, and basically Nintendo's new external pack that comes with the online services for Nintendo 64. So the first one, my favorite, Jesy Nelson, she was in a group called Little Mix. Now the updated information with this is within the last 3 days, the group members of Little Mix basically came out and spoke about Jesy Nelson's Blackfishing and how they felt about it. And lo and behold, what we find out is that the people within the group had already expressed to Jesy that she was blackfishing, and that at one point that they felt extremely uncomfortable performing with her doing that type of trope. Now, even though they were friends, they continued to, bring the topic to her and educate her. She basically said there was nothing wrong with what she was doing and that she didn't see anything wrong with it. So, we're going back to the forefront of this blackfishing situation. Now, like I had said in my previous video, it's obvious that she's blackfishing. If you look at the video that I used for this thumbnail of this exact video, it's a side-by-side comparison of what she looks like when she doesn't have makeup on, when she isn't tanning or anything like that. And as you can see, she clearly looks like a white European woman wearing a wig. That being said, there's nothing wrong with, as I always say, with infatuation of another culture. There's plenty of black people who are infatuated with Asian culture. There's plenty of white people who are infatuated with East Asian culture. There's plenty of Asians who are infatuated with black culture. So it's so on and so forth. So there's nothing wrong with it. The only problem that really comes down when it starts to become an issue is when you have people not being in acknowledgement of what they're doing. Now, obviously, you're doing your first music video is with P. Diddy. It's with Nicki Minaj. So, you are going to pander a little bit to black people, just a little bit. So there's nothing wrong with that. This goes back to the same conversation we were having with Donald Glover. And his situation, which I'm going to make a video separate completely just for that, because that's an important situation about Donald Glover being a sellout. But then you have people who literally blackfish and they're not considered sellouts. So that's where the intersectionality starts to mix up. Now with the Little Mix group, when they spoke about it, they said they had no hard feelings against her. There was nothing wrong with it in the sense of their friendship. It was just that they educated her on what was going on. She denied it, and that's it. So we see that in a certain space, she was confronted about this issue, meaning that it's a real issue. No one would just confront you with this issue if they didn't feel as though this wasn't a real issue. It's a big issue. Come on. Like, at the end of the day, people are going to feel some type of way. People are going to look at it as a certain type of way. And no, this is not to say that, a black person can't wear a blonde wig. That has nothing to do with anything. This is a common trope amongst black people and white people. Black people, certain black people tend to do what's called lightening of skin. This is very popular in Caribbean culture, where you lighten your skin, or you use a cream to lighten it up to give you a lighter complexion to appeal to Eurocentric dominant features. This has always been common. And then there's white women using blackfishing, pandering to black audience, such as Ariana Grande with her, extreme tanning, Kim Kardashian with her extreme tanning, and now Jesy Nelson with her extreme tanning. Now, obviously, it's okay to tan. There's nothing wrong with it, but at a certain extent, it doesn't become tanning anymore. It just becomes what you see. And in this situation with Jesy Nelson, you know, extreme tanning, song with Nicki Minaj and P. Diddy, you know, getting your hair blown out, basically getting it in twists that only a style black girls do, you know, having the vernacular, the body language of a black girl in that video. You know, you watch her other videos and that's not who she is. So that's what comes down to that subject. So, you know, it is what it is. I'm done talking about it. Blackfishing is nothing new, and this is just, you know, once again, the history of what happens when you know, people aren't educated properly about black issues that have existed since, you know, the early 1900s. This is something that's been going on, and the predominant push for this one is because, once again, black people have been ostracized for their looks, their hair, the color of our skin. So that's basically what it comes down to. You know, we get ostracized for a lot of things, and that being said, to see someone else be able to receive gratification while taking all the stereotypes that are considered negative about black people is pretty offensive, especially for black women, because black women are told, oh, you have a bad attitude, you know, your hair isn't proper, you know, skin complexion, etc., etc. So the fact that she's being able to be a darker skin complexion, wear braids, have an attitude in videos, and no one complains about it, obviously we're going to get to a certain point where people are going to feel offended, and that's how it is, you know. All right, so that part done. Second part, one of my favorites. Always want to re-update on this one. It was the Dave Chappelle situation. Now with Dave Chappelle, obviously, you know, with the whole transgender backlash that he's receiving for his special, The Closer, now we're getting to the point where we're finding out that, you know, Netflix employees are basically protesting. Transgender and LGBT community activists are coming out and speaking up against it, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. Once again, you know, it's people's right to speak about something when they come from a marginalized community. I don't see anything wrong with it because, once again, I'm black. I come from a marginalized community, and being black has always been intersectional. So one thing I understand is that the people who have it the roughest when it comes to LGBTQ community are black people, because unfortunately black people, because of systemic environment issues, are thrust into the public, into the open with their sexual identity. It be gay, it be transgender, it be you know, cross-dressing. Black people, unfortunately, because of the environment that we grow up in, a lot of times we're thrust with our sexuality first thing into the open. A lot of my friends growing up, just for example, lost their virginity predominantly around 13, 14 years old. Out of all my friends, I was pretty much the oldest to lose my virginity, which is surprising, at 16. So it just goes to show you the sexual activity that happens in urban environments, and once that sexual activity happens, you're open to sexuality much more. So this is something that comes with being intersectional community of being black and LGBTQ. So I understand where the problem comes from. You know, Dave Chappelle, throughout his special, he was equating to LGBTQ problems and issues being more of a white patriarchal control, which is completely, absolutely redundant nonsense, simply off of the fact that we know that black people have been intersectional with the LGBT community since forever. The supporters of the gay rights movement in the 60s and 70s were black people who participated in the Black Panther Party. Especially if you look at the whole Stonewall riots. You go back, do some research on that. You can see that impartially helped by the Black Panther Party. So we understand the intersectionality of this. So that being said, you know, there's nothing wrong with them speaking on it, and I hope that more people go out and try to speak up more about it. There's nothing wrong with Dave Chappelle said besides using the analogy of turf. Other than that, I think that, you know, he was explaining what he felt in a good way, but at the same time, it was a little borderline to the point where people did feel offended. So once again, it comes down to the fact of who wants to debate, who doesn't want to debate, and you know, there's nothing wrong with it because Dave Chappelle is a black, straight, heterosexual male. So realistically, this topic for him to be talking about is no different than Bill Maher trying to speak about black issues. Yeah, so, once again, I have no problem with that, and hopefully we'll definitely get more news on it, because I love Dave Chappelle and I always want to keep updated on what the things he does, because a lot of times it brings action to the community that we're talking about. And the final conversation of the One Giant Repost, because I always love doing One Giant Repost. Shout out to Nintendo for releasing the Nintendo 64 expansion pack for the online service. From what we found out, it's garbaggio. One of my friends, he came over to my house. We end up playing it. For me, what was the biggest turnoff for me is that I have Super Mario 64 with the All-Star Mario 3D collection. Now, if you played this pack version, it's horrible. It's I don't know what to call it. I feel like it's garbage. It's just not up to the standard of the emulation that's done in All-Star Mario 3D, which is really weird to me, because you would assume that they would use the same emulation technology for the the Mario 64 emulator. So from what we found out, that's completely wrong. Unlike the old way that they used to do, where they individualize every emulator, that's not what they're doing with this situation. With basically what they're doing is every game is being put under one emulation. It's not being tweaked or modified so that certain problems can be fixed. As you know, with Legend of Zelda, you have the fog issue. With Mario 64, you have the split screen issue down the line because of the emulation, and so on and so forth. Banjo-Kazooie has cutscene problems and gaps within the loading. I could keep going. GoldenEye 64 has fog detail problems, has auto aim issues, has a lot of loading problems. So just to see all these problems, not the GoldenEye, but obviously for me, I'm using Super Mario 64 as my basis. To see those problems still exist, and I have an emulator for my PC, and I have an emulator for my my PSP, and I use the Virtual Console emulator for my Wii U. It's crazy that we're even dealing with this issue. And it's crazy because in my original video, I said exactly that it'd be funny if they charge $50, and I was correct. They really tried to charge $50 for this content, which I think is, it's backwards in Nintendo. It's not good. Nintendo needs to move forward with the times. And basically, that being said, I understand that they want to keep that archaic way of doing business. Not archaic, I don't want to say that. Very old school. They know how to stretch old technology and make it useful, which is appreciative. But at this point, you have a bad Nintendo. You have a bad Nintendo OLED. It's good for what it's worth, but the OLED could have came out a year ago. Let's be honest with that one. Then you have the release of Metroid Dread, which I thought was an okay game, but a 2D platformer is not worth $60. It doesn't matter what you say or think. Cuphead wasn't $60. Mario Sonic Mania wasn't $60, and so on and so forth. So there's no reason why this game should be worth that type of money at all. So that's basically it. I hope Nintendo fixes these issues, because the Nintendo 64 pack is a good idea, but for what it's priced at and for what it's worth, it's not worth it. You could just download the emulators on your computer. I've been a big emulator fan, especially on Android. Now, if Android has this complete emulator for Nintendo 64, and I was running a Nintendo 64 emulator on my Galaxy S Tab when I had nothing to play on. I was running it on a Nook book. Yeah, a Nintendo 64 and MAME emulator running on a Nook. So that's my point. And those were giving me crisp, clear, 3-time detail, 3-time fog detail. So if I'm having an issue with this pack, they gotta update it. They gotta do something new. So hopefully Nintendo fixes that issue, and we might get something new from them. I just hope that they reinvent the process and bring something new to the forefront, because right now as it looks like, Nintendo is not killing it. You know, the games are not up to par. The console release for the OLED is alright. I'm going to get the OLED. My boy, he ended up getting it. He waited in line. I've spent my money on a RTX 3070. So I'm really not in the mood to really like go out and buy some new hardware. But I am thinking about trading my PlayStation 4 and my Switch V1, which will come out to $350 plus 2 games, my Kingdom Hearts 1.2 and my God of War game, and that will all total about $380. So I do have enough money, but the question is, do I spend it on that or do I spend it on the Steam Deck? I absolutely don't know at this point. Hopefully I could spend money on both, but I am a conservative consumer, meaning that just because people have money doesn't mean I'm gonna spend it crazily. I'm not like that. I make my choices very wisely because with technology I like to be able to resell it. Obviously the OLED and the Steam Deck are going to be resellable. So hopefully we get some more information, and I'll see you guys in the next one of One Giant Repost.